I'm Damian Bowen with the Department of Agronomy at Iowa State University, and basically here just today to share our experience with vGPU and a little bit about our virtualization strategy in our colleges and universities so they can get an idea of where we're at and how it's going to work for us. So our story kind of outlined here with a little bit about the department and university, just so you know the like size of our how many people we have at the university, the colleges, etc. A little bit about the business. Of course, there's always a business case to do this kind of stuff, do virtualization, and the IT case, how it's worked out for us. A little bit about ISU VDI, Agronomy VDI. We're a little unique situation in our department. There's still a few in the university left that have their own infrastructures, which probably started early on before the university got its own. We still actually run ours. Of course, the trend always is centralization, so I imagine that will change over time. But for now, we have the flexibility to kind of experiment and do things that others might not be doing. We'll also cover agronomy applications. It's all about the apps. Faculty, staff, student benefits, and issues. I can share some personal experiences from what I've had with the students and faculty and my interaction with them and kind of what they've liked and disliked about the whole VDI system. Our experience with vGPU early access program, and then also our future VDI plans. So ISU is made up of 8 colleges. You can kind of see there. The Department of Agronomy is within the Agricultural and Life Sciences College, and we're just one department out of many that are in that college. Business, Design, Engineering, Human Sciences, Liberal Arts and Sciences, Vet Med. We have a large Vet Med college, and the graduate college. You can kind of see the other stats there, 29,000 undergrads, 100 total majors at the university, and a lot of grad students. Department of Agronomy, we're one of the larger departments on campus, probably not the largest, but pretty close. If you don't know what agronomy is, it's basically the study of soil, weather, seeds, genetics, and crop growth as it relates to agriculture. So we do the farming deal and quite a bit of science behind it to make our food supply more sustainable, and it's a pretty interesting topic in that regard. So we have about 85 faculty, 120 staff, 320 undergrad students registered in the program, 130 grad students, and 24, 25 postdocs. I think our big thing in our computer labs, though, is we have the 100 courses, the 200 courses that many cross-discipline students will take. This is part of their, perhaps as a part of their plan, or just as even as like an elective. And of course, that impacts our lab usage quite a bit and how we're going to organize it and allow people to use our resources. So the business case for VDI, it's easy for me to just say that it's more efficient. I mean, I think that's the general consensus out there, but I've got a little bit more to back that up. Recently, the Iowa Board of Regents completed what's called a tier study in 2014, which is basically to make everything more efficient and cost effective. And looking through their reports, they actually recommended technology innovations to reduce the total cost of ownership, which is of course interesting to any organization, be it a business or education. They did recommend thin clients and VDI as a solution to cut down on, I think there was some 30,000 desktops within Iowa. This is actually all, if you Google this, you can find it out on the internet, the full report of the efficiency study through the state government website. So our IT case, and I actually started with agronomy in 2011, and I ran into all the same things that a lot of what Art mentioned earlier on in the presentation. Essentially, our labs were scattered across with different images on each one, different operating systems, different applications. I was having to update them once a term with my technicians. It was just a real pain and horrible. It took a lot of time. It wasn't efficient, and so we right away looked to VDI to help solve that issue. Some things that happened from that, I'd say, is that I didn't actually think about in the beginning, but we ended up being able to put all of our computing type resources under one system login. And I think that's been very beneficial for everyone, not having to learn different systems on or different ways and different login applications, websites to get into different resources, but they can all log in and access everything from one place. And I think Art kind of mentioned that with his showing how the apps and everything are all in one spot. I think that's very beneficial for faculty and staff. Some of the resources that we've been able to in agronomy bring together into one login, definitely the general PC labs. That was the big, I think that was the big one for me and our team, because it's greatly reduced the amount of work we have to do in those labs. Classroom instruction, that was also very challenging before VDI, just in the regard that even though we have our systems locked down, we still, with all the apps, and we always had compatibility issues when an instructor would come in to give a classroom session, undoubtedly, almost without fail, even though we'd updated them the night before, there would be some compatibility issue on a handful of the machines. And that was it was a bad experience for the students, the staff member, faculty member, and definitely for us too in our time. Distance education, of course, we previously had a totally separate terminal server, and we've been able to combine all that into there. Research computing is just kind of a new thing for us, but looking for Windows-based applications for those scientists that don't wish to learn command line and Linux. We're able to do that through a VDI session, which is perhaps a little bit lower density VDI on a server with more resources per virtual machine. And BYOD, which is the big one for college campuses now. Every student wants to access the resources from their own device. And it's made everything much easier. Before, trying to go through and help people install apps on their computers and update them if they had a virus, there's just so many issues I'm sure everyone knows that you could run into when installing a more complex application on someone's computer, and that's all avoided with VDI. Definitely easier to manage just because there's less resources required. That's, I think, mostly with staff time. I mean, it's really reduced. We've been able to focus more on into the faculty and the staff, and the student stuff is kind of ran on its own. Updates, improved security, I think that's worth noting as well. Just take from me, for example, my workstation. As soon as we put this system together, I put my main workstation on it. That way I would know right away if there was an issue with it, and it's worked out really well. If anyone were ever to steal my laptop, if I were to lose it somewhere, they would only have access to Office on my laptop. All my IT administrative programs reside on the server, and it's still only a password away, but it is that one step further protected than it would be if I had everything on my local laptop. Brief overview of the current VDI state here at ISU. Central IT, they actually have their own infrastructure and approximately 2,000 virtual machines running, mostly consisting of student labs, and I think it's split about between student labs and faculty and staff virtual machines for special purposes, using blade servers, SSD storage, and it is growing. That's especially with our intentions to move over some of our things to their platform and the results of the tier study. Brief overview on the agronomy VDI. We began using RDS in 2013. We used Virtual Machine Manager for our image management deployment. Have a few Dell R720 servers. We run all of our server infrastructure on one. A few VDI hosts, one remote app host, and we've got about 1,000 active users, give or take, and it's a rotating thing for term. It's not like in a business where everyone will sit down and work for 8 hours and then leave. The concurrent usage there is a little trickier to handle, but in our environment, we have constantly rotating class schedules, PC lab usage, and I'm sure anyone in education knows kind of how that works. That actually makes it a little easier, I think, to scale these servers out. It's also worth noting we began experimenting with NVIDIA Grid SDK, and that was my intent to try to solve an issue with the virtual graphics, which wasn't working so well in some cases for certain applications and PC use scenarios. And we picked up a Dell Precision with a couple of Grid K2 cards in it to begin our Grid SDK work, and just primarily aimed at improving the app performance and even the VDI performance if we could get to that point. As far as our application, just a real general overview, I think agronomy apps are still kind of new on the scene. I've seen quite a few new ones pop up lately, and a lot of the ones that have been established are starting to create more graphical interfaces. And most of the ones that are used are the statistical apps, land analysis, GPS. Simulation apps, I think, are going to be big in the future for agronomy, perhaps even almost in like a game-like format. Meteorology, radar apps. We do help work with meteorology quite a bit, and the radar apps is pretty important. You know, that's a lot of what they do is look at the weather, the satellites, and if you've ever tried to look at a satellite when there's some issues with graphics, it doesn't work too well to follow the storm or any of the data coming up on it. So some of my brief experiences with how the faculty and staff have handled this whole new system change. Seems like most of the students really just don't care. I mean, they're there to do their work, watch their YouTube videos during breaks, and get on out. As long as they can log in and everything is good, they don't care. I think that's the primary thing there. Students have commented a lot on the mobility. They love being able to work at home. And I monitor our server usage at night. Say probably it dropped about a quarter to half usage during that time, which is pretty cool to see. So they're definitely making use of the at-home work. There are still, the classroom instruction is definitely easier for faculty. I think that was mentioned earlier, but they don't have to worry. They always have a consistent experience when they're teaching now. It's not always having to wonder if there was some app that's not going to work well with another, even though we fixed it all the night before, or some update. There are we've had a little bit of feedback that they just don't like the new cloud system. They want to go back to their old traditional desktops. I think that's pretty prevalent in any type of new change. I mean, I try to convince people that it's the way to go. It is. I mean, it's the way we're all going to go. So, some of the issues we've had. A few more of the issues. The 3D and graphical apps just don't perform well in our current setup, and the VDI, just the actual usage of a general VDI desktop, it does feel generic without that extra graphics boost. By now, most people have even the Intel chips integrated have pretty decent graphics, DirectX acceleration, and without that, it's like going back to the 90s, almost early 2000s. And the graphics lab on a computer can cause insanity. I've seen it happen. You're trying to do a PowerPoint presentation and you get a 3-second jump in between things. It's just not a good way to do work. So I really believe that the vGPU is a game changer for us, and that's certainly for the university. But we participated in the VMware Grid vGPU Early Access Program in 2014, the end. I had no prior VMware infrastructure experience to entering this program. I have worked with VMware Workstation quite a bit, but I had never worked with View or Horizon or some of the others, so I was jumping into it kind of blind. I did collaborate with ISU IT because they had the VMware backend, and I figured that we'd be able to work with them to make something work. I will say that going through the documentation, it was excellent. I've gone through a lot of tech documentation, and I was able to go right through it and have it all set up in a couple days. Obviously, I had a little experience with virtualization and infrastructure, but without any in the VMware and NVIDIA, it was impressive how fast it got up and running, honestly, without any issues. And it definitely is a true hardware GPU sharing solution. I've tried all of them, and I think this one has worked the best for us so far. The DirectX and OpenGL app performance was great when we got to do our testing, and it was very similar to a local desktop with the VDI and vGPU. And for the statistical apps, I also noticed something interesting, that it did seem to offload some of the CPU and system memory time that by offloading some of the video rendering that normally is done on the software-based solution would be done on the server CPU rather than the GPU. So I think that's an important point to note, that it can actually benefit all apps as well. Just a quick benchmark result. Unfortunately, our time was a bit short because it's kind of a busy time for a year. We had a good week to go, but we were able to do some benchmarks just to see how everything ran. I collaborated with an engineering department manager and SolidWorks, which is actually a program that I've used extensively in the past as well. It's kind of fun to be able to test that. We didn't get to do the full scalability testing just because of the time we had, but we did get a pretty decent chart here comparing some actual physical devices and the software-based VMware solution and the 220Q and 280Q profiles. Now that would actually be the lower end vGPU profile and also the higher end one. So we kind of went to the extreme and then the low end. And what we found in the results there, as you can see, is that actually our 220Q outperformed our Dell Precision desktop, which actually had the Quadro K series, K600 series, which was mentioned earlier. And so the results are pretty good there for the vGPU. I think we determined we probably would go with the 220Q for the CAD programs in our profile. But definitely the performance was there, and you could see the results when you're using it as well. So with all that, our future VI plans, we are going to, ISU will be implementing Grid, and I've been able to work with them on that and get that set up. And we'll probably just add more as we go. Start off with one server, do a lab, and expand out as we need it through apps. Our infrastructure will most likely utilize their existing. It makes more sense to send. I'm sure it will be pulled that way eventually. The Grid SDK can be used on vGPU, which is good for us. That means we don't have to separate out our, testing. And I'm hoping for one personal VM for every grad student in agronomy. That's kind of my goal. We only have 120. And if someone comes in a new program, they get a VM and they can keep that through graduation. I think that's will be an excellent case scenario for our graduate students and their educational experience. Obviously, expanding VDI to faculty and staff members, and I can see, based on the performance there, if I had my way, we'd have it for have a vGPU-enabled VDI session for every user. Probably not realistic, but you get the full desktop experience, and I think even discrete desktop graphics cards started off the same way, where there weren't really many computers to start off, and then they slowly, gradually picked up, and all of a sudden, almost all of them have, even the integrated chips have it. I'm sure we'll see that with VDI as well. So thanks for your attention and time.
Thank you very much, Damien. We appreciate your time today. We do have some questions starting to pop in on the chat window. The first question that we have was, what version of Horizon View standard do you need to be on to support a Grid vGPU? I'm going to direct that to either Art or to Ismet. Art or Ismet, if you're both talking, make sure that you *6 to unmute.
So can you hear me, Steve?
Yes, I can.
So the question is, what version of vSphere?
Of Horizon View do you need to be on to support a Grid vGPU?
Okay. I want to see if Art knows or if
can you hear me okay?
6.
Yeah, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is what you just said. So as long as you're on 6, you can start using this. I mean, we've been supporting 3D graphics as early as I'm trying to think, even as early as our bottom end 5X series. But actual vGPU with vSphere 6, that integration is within Horizon 6.
Yeah, the important part there. Sorry. Yeah, the important part there for vGPU support is the vSphere 6.
Yes.
Hi, this is Jeff Weiss. So yes, you have to have the latest version of vSphere 6, and Horizon 6.1 to leverage vGPU in Horizon pools.
Thanks, Jeff. Jeff Weiss is with NVIDIA. He's our National Solutions Architect Manager for the Grid Solutions.
Okay. Thank you. The next question that we have is, what use case would be appropriate for splitting 32 ways with the K1? And then the follow-on question to that was, would something like Google Earth be lightweight enough to benefit from a 32-user configuration of the K1?
Yeah, good question. And, I'll also ask Damien if he has any experience on that, anything he's tried, as well as Jeff. But, the proof is going to be testing it out. But I would say probably yes. You're going to get, if you don't get 32, maybe get close to that, 28 or 30. But that would be something on the lower end, yes. Jeff, would you agree? Can't hear. It's all right. Well,
I'm here. I'm sorry. I was on mute. Yeah, so the lowest profile is a 512 RAM. So, if that is a good use case for those end users and they get a good end user experience, then you can leverage that and get the highest density possible. So we have a whole, we're working on these app guides for our product set around specific applications. So Esri is one of the first guides that we're coming through, and we have done scale testing with those applications. As soon as those app guides are available, we have a reference architecture that we measured against. But to Ismet's point, you'll want to do testing on your own to make sure that the end user experience is what you're expecting.
Ismet, I think you told me that you had some questions sent to you privately. If you want to go ahead and address those.
Yep. This question is from Francisco. It says, is the, I'm not sure what that word, Alivia remote delivery, we're running into degraded remote video performance when using mechanical engineering packages like SolidWorks. So yes, absolutely. Both the K1 and K2 cards will help in that case. SolidWorks is a very common applications used with our graphics cards. And you have a follow-on question saying, would you recommend for AutoCAD and SolidWorks and NVIDIA Grid K2 cards? Yes, and the answer for that is also yes. I definitely recommend the K2 cards for that. That's what we've seen used, and that's the one that will give you the best performance. And I know AutoCAD, but I think even SolidWorks is one of those applications on the TriGrid website that you can test and try out as well.
Yeah, I just want to remind everybody that we will be sending out a recording of this webinar and links to the NVIDIA and VMware site to everybody who attended and registered for this as well.
I have another question on the grid card support on several questions, all referred to the grid card support on server platforms. One is it supported on blades? The answer to that for the most part today is no. And I say the most part because the only vendor is HP that can do kind of a mezzanine card that goes into their blade that you can put one of these cards. Otherwise, all the servers you'll find on our Buy Grid site for the hardware compatibility list are rack mount servers. And stay tuned in the future for changes in this area. The other question still with our card is, can you put different cards K1 and K2 on the same server? And the answer to that is yes. You can put two cards on a server. One of them can be a K1 and another one can be a K2. And the follow-on question, which to explain a little bit further, is you define what profile you're going to use on each GPU on each card. So, for example, a K2 that has two GPUs, you can have one profile on one GPU and a different profile on the other GPU. And then the system with vSphere and our GPU manager will know how to direct that to the right GPU and assign that profile. So very flexible in the way you can configure. So those are the questions I have. Hope that was helpful. And if there's any more questions around those answers, please jump in and ask them.
There was one other question. It says, do the hardware vendors require factory integration of the cards, or can individual companies integrate cards themselves?
I guess it's referring to, can the individual companies install the cards themselves? And Jeff, I guess the answer is yes.
And that he was the person who asked it said yes, that is correct. That's what he's asking.
Okay.
So when are you saying as if you were an integrator? You would buy the servers and the cards separately?
No, I think it's asking the actual end user if they buy the cards, they order them, whether it's through Dell or HP, then and they receive them. Can they install them themselves?
Yeah. So okay. So it's an interesting question because we recommend if you're going to buy a server and you know you're going to get a grid card, just order them together because each OEM has some specialized hardware that allows you to install the card. And so if you already have a server and you've looked at it and seen it's on the HCL on both the NVIDIA website and the VMware website, then you can order a card for that server, but then you want to make sure that you get there's like an enablement kit for Dell, for example, and you want to buy the card from Dell if you're putting it in a Dell server. Whereas if you're buying it for an HP server, you'll want to buy the card from HP because they have specialized BIOS and hardware. So the easiest answer is if you're planning to buy them together. If you already have existing hardware and you want to buy a card for it, then buy the card from the vendor you bought the hardware from.
Thanks, Jeff. And actually, I kind of omitted answering another part of the question originally from Francisco, which was the price of our cards. So we do not, we as NVIDIA do not sell the cards directly to the end users, to you. We sell them through our OEMs, all those vendors that I showed on the previous slide, whether it's Dell, HP, Cisco, or any of the other ones. So we do not set that price, and I'm sorry, I don't want to be evasive, but I just cannot answer that question because it's going to depend on those OEMs, what they sell it to you.
Right, Ismet. There have been several questions around pricing for these solutions. Neither VMware nor NVIDIA sell direct. We sell through VMware in particular sells through our partner channel, so we can help you spec out your solutions and then get a partner involved to get you your final pricing. I believe we're getting close to the top of the hour. I don't have any more questions in the chat window at this time, so I think we'll go ahead and close for now. Would like to thank all of our presenters, Damian Boland with Iowa State, Art Ashman, the SC from VMware, Ismet Nisikalachi from NVIDIA, and of course, Brian Wolf. Thank you, and again, a reminder, we will send an email out with a link to this, a recording of this webinar, and links to several websites mentioned as well. Thank you again, and we appreciate you joining us today.